Welcome to this episode of Let's Chat. I'm your host, Chris Revel, coming from the Cat Cave in Warwick, Rhode Island, recording this in my daughter's playroom. This was a really fun episode. Something I've actually been looking forward to putting out for a while. I'm really happy with how it came out. Taylor is my new friend. We've confirmed that after our interview because, boy, howdy, did we just get along real well. We had a lot in common. So before this interview, I actually had met Taylor through our friend of the show, Sean Colon, when he had approached me with this idea of doing a punk rock documentary filmmaker roundtable, which we did, which featured John Nix, who just made Beyond Barricades, has been on the show, Sean, who made the documentary A Fat Wreck, and then Scott Crawford, who made Salad Days, and I believe his new movie Cream about Cream magazine just came out, and also on that panel was Taylor. And at that point, I had seen Ska movie. Sorry. At that point, I saw Pick It Up Ska in the '90s, which I absolutely loved, and Taylor was kind enough to send over a screener for the Last Blockbuster, which will be available for video on demand on Tuesday if you're listening to this in real time on December 15th, which I recommend everyone get. And the Last Blockbuster was honestly, it's one of my favorite documentaries I've ever seen. I watch a lot of documentaries, enough where I could host a panel about it and like to do that again. But a huge fan of documentaries. I'll share this in the episode as well, but I don't give two shits about Blockbuster. So this wasn't a movie I walked into. I'm like, oh my god, I miss Blockbuster and nostalgia. I grew up, my family's always been more big small businesses. My uncle Greg owned a chain of I think some stores of video stores in the Boston area growing up. So we were never a Blockbuster family. But this movie is so much more about the company of Blockbuster. While that story is in there and really told really well and really interesting, it's more about this like one store and this woman Sandy and this community that's been built around it, where they were a small mom and pop store. Blockbuster came in, strong armed them. They forced them to change into a Blockbuster, and then there's one Blockbuster left. Even today, I'm recording this December 13th, 2020. Even with COVID, they're still open. And the woman who runs it is just, oh my God, there's a part of the documentary with her and her family that just brings you to tears. It's so beautiful. Um, and I think that's what Taylor does really well. He balances a tone. He has all the people I love in it. Ron Funches, Kevin Smith, um, Doug Benson, well, Lauren Lapkus narrates it. It's fucking nuts. But like Sandy, there's something about Sandy that you really get pulled in by this. So I absolutely love this documentary. I actually watched it twice now. I've like many people been going through some rough patches, and sometimes you just need some optimism and some hope. And a little quirky documentary. So I recommend this to everyone. Please, 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 if you can, rent it, buy it, whenever it comes out. There's gonna be a really fun watch party with a film threat that will be on December 18th. They're going to be doing that on their Twitch, YouTube, Periscope, which is Twitter and Facebook Live. You can find that at filmthreat.com. We're going to post everything on the Let's Chat podcast uh, Twitter and as well as the in our various groups. But make sure you follow that. Make sure you follow Taylor online. I'm at this point, I'm straight up a fan of his. I love The Last Blockbuster. Truly one of my favorite documentaries I've ever seen. I love Scott Pick It Up in the '90s because I fucking love Scott. And I think they really hammered home what Scott is and what it means to so many people past Real Big Fish. And I like Real Big Fish a lot, but it's more than that. So I don't know. Taylor's definitely one of my new. He I know he's my friend, but he's truly one of my favorite filmmakers at this point. He's gonna direct a Marvel movie one day. I really think he's the next Taika Waititi to be fair. So make sure you check that out. Check out his work. His website is Pop Motion Pictures. They make. If you like this podcast, you're gonna like everything Taylor's making on Pop because and in this crew. It's great. So we're gonna have some really big updates coming up very shortly. One I can actually announce right now. Uh, we have started Let's Chat Club. It's what we will be doing is it's going to be we offer various service with a membership fee, and including in that is a access to our private Discord group and our private Facebook group, and we all work together. We've been busting our asses off. We're up and running. We're going to be doing a lot bigger push for this pretty soon, but I'm going to put it right here. So you'll see some new artwork change. Maybe I'll be writing to you to see if you'd like to join. If you have any interest, please reach out to us at Let's Chat Podcast on all the things, or Let's Chat Podcast at gmail.com. And I'd love to talk to you more about it and see if you're interested in it. And before we get to the episode, I just wanted to give a quick little update. Thank you to all the kind words and people out there in the internet who were reaching out, asking, and concerned about if you may or may not know, some health issues I may or may not be having. The long story short, so I work at a hospital, which has not been fun right now. I work at a psychiatric hospital, and I wasn't feeling good. It's not COVID. Called the doctor, and I got pulled out of work for a few weeks with the old something's wrong. We don't know what. We got some ideas, but we gotta do some tests. Blah blah blah. To be fair, I'm not terrified. I grew up with a heart condition, so I guess I grew up sick essentially. So I can handle this stuff pretty well. A little frustrating just because with COVID being what it is, it's going to take longer to get necessary tests done. I am enjoying the few weeks off, so if I'm a little quiet on social media, that will be why. And we have a couple great guests coming up into January, and I'm hoping to continue that, but I'm gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next in terms of my personal news. But most of my effort will be going more towards our Let's Chat Club. So make sure you find us online. But thanks for all the people reaching out. If I know anything, obviously I'll let you all know online. But I'm in good health, good spirits. I've got a great crew at work who's been nothing but kind and supportive, and a great family who's been kind and supportive, and feeling fortunate that I can actually. It's kind of a long intro. Let's get to it.
We're gonna find some regular dudes.
I'm super stoked because we had the good fortune of meeting when we did the round table that our buddy Sean put together. We put together with Sean. Shout out Sean Cologne. But I had the fun. Oh, that's right. I had a really funny story I wanted to tell you. I did an episode before we did the round table. I had recorded with him and John Nix, and Sean had recorded the audio on his Zoom, and then he sent it over to me. But something happened the day we did it, where we did it on Sean's Zoom account, and he forgot to let me into the room right away. So there's just 15 minutes of him and John unknowingly, no one would hear this later, shooting the shit. And Sean and John, I might even still have it. They said nothing but really kind things. I remember Sean was like, "Yeah, and that pick it up, man. That Taylor guy, I gotta know him. It seems like my spirit animal," and I'm a huge wearing his Fat Wreck shirt right now. I just happen to have it on. After seeing the Pick It Up in the 90's, I kind of agree. I definitely agree with Sean. You do kind of felt like kindred spirits in that sense, in terms of tone.
Yeah. Well, he's been, I reached out to him when I was early in the Pick It Up process because I had seen a Fat Wreck, and it's kind of exactly the kind of doc that I like. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of cool information and fun anecdotes in there. And so he was on a short list, but I reached out to a bunch of documentary directors and even before that on my first movie, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I just figured, well, this guy's done it. His movie's out. It was available on my television, so he must know something that I don't know. And he's been nothing but super kind and helpful the whole way through. And it's, I consider him a friend of mine now. And now it's it's a small world of independent documentary filmmakers, but it seems like we're all kind of cut from the same cloth,
Yeah. And so, and I'm curious to you, I've been saying, I've just been having this thought recently a lot that at least for me, the podcast scene, or meeting all you wonderful people in independent movies. But for me, my doing the podcast has kind of replaced what the scene was for me when I was younger, going to shows and stuff. But then, get old, life happens, and I have a regular job and stuff. And now it's there's this, especially the pandemic, I think really advanced that for maybe some of the culture that weren't living on the internet as frequently. But it's really become a real scene. There's I have like a producing team, like my business partner and my other producer, like we've never met in real life, but like I talk to them I mean, I see them, I talk to them more than I talk to my own neighbors. You know, it's interesting. It's so cool how like all these people, you know, you just kind of pick these little people, and then, you know, I definitely agree with that. But I actually really want to start with the beginning because you're kind of a bit of an anomaly to me, because you love like I can't even explain how much both Pick It Up and Last Blockbuster spoke to me of like everything I love, like like it. You just happen to love all the same hyper niche stuff that I also love. Like I was like when I was watching your stuff and like learning about, it, I was like, oh my god, I love all of these things. But then you present it in a very like, I mean, like the Back to the Future documentary, and then I saw you cosplaying as Marty McFly, and then I find out you were in like playing in ska bands for years and years. I'm like, who are you? So yeah, that's a great question. Who are you? But so,
Who are you?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
like, so where does your journey start? Where are you from?
Well, I was born and raised for the first few years in San Francisco, California. But my parents were divorced when I was like one. My dad lived up here in Oregon. My mom lived in San Francisco. So I split my time for the most part. And then going into high school, junior high, I moved up to Oregon. And it was a small town. Like I live in Bend, Oregon now, but the town I moved up to was called Vida. It was one of the towns that was just destroyed in the fires. But
I'm so sorry.
it sucks for everybody I knew in those years, and I've still got some family there. Um, but that was like a tiny town. Like it had a gas station and a restaurant, and the restaurant was my dad owned the restaurant, so I worked at the restaurant as a teenager, and that was it. Like 4 houses. It was like I don't know, 80 people live in that town, and I came from San Francisco, which was a huge. I mean, it's San Francisco.
Yeah.
In the 80s and in the early 90s, and so I feel like I got a lot of the different life experiences. I sort of feel like I got the big city childhood and also the super, super small town childhood and nothing in between. So I think maybe that does affect my my pop culture touchstones and things. And it's super different. Like in San Francisco, we had a comic book store that I got to hang out at all the time. And, you know, I loved Spider-Man and the X-Men and Captain America and all these things that at the time only the nerds were into, you know, and my friends and I would try to play Dungeons and Dragons, but we couldn't figure out the rules right. And there was no internet. So we just did it anyway. And what we ended up doing was just like making little paper toys and playing fake made up adventures, stuff like that. And like the other half of the time I was like going fishing and hiking in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And we didn't have a comic book store. We didn't have anything. We had this one gas station, but the gas station did rent VHS tapes.
Nice.
So I could walk down. It was like a third of a mile from my house. I could walk down there and like rent movies. And my dad up here in Oregon had cable. And both my mom and dad were very busy people. I was left alone a lot as a youngster. Yeah. Well, not really, because they both worked from home, but they were like, don't go in that room. That's the working room. You know, that's the office. Or like at my dad's restaurant, it would be like there was a house attached to a restaurant and there was a door in between. And I wasn't allowed to go through the door. So like when I would be a bratty kid and need something, I would just like open the door and sit there. And I'd be like, Dad, 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 the cable's out, Dad, you know, or whatever it was. That's all I had. I had action figures and comic books and TV and movies. And so I feel like that kind of formed a stronger bond for me with like, I love Ninja Turtles more than I should, but that's what I had. Those were my babysitters, you know, Saved by the Bell, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know, that Saturday morning X-Men cartoon in the 90s, all that stuff was
that Morph episode.
Oh man. Morph made me mad because I was such a comics guy and that was the character they made up for the cartoon.
Oh, dude,
I was like, well, he's got to die, you know? He's not part of the team.
First,
You can't just go making up characters.
first time I ever cried watching television as a kid. Like inconsolable. He was just like, oh
Wow.
my god, they died. And then he comes back as a villain later on. I'm still mad about this.
Right,
I'm
right, right.
36 and I still think about this. When I watched it recently, so who are you kidding? I got Disney
It's
Plus.
a reasonable
Yeah,
response. Yeah.
I know. There's just too many topics to not. I'm gonna try to stay on track, but everything I'm like, yep, I like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I love that. You know, it sounds. I'm not. Do you ever? I'm sure you must like Dave Chappelle. I'm a huge I like Dave Chappelle like most people, but he has that kind of similar talk, like growing up in Ohio and then like kind of living in New York, that like double life. But I think that's what makes the most interesting of people who just kind of like get to experience different aspects of culture because it definitely, at least for myself too, it's made me more open-minded of like just shutting
Yeah.
stuff off. I'm like, I don't know, there's fun to do in the. I've had tons of fun in the woods, and I've had tons of fun in cities. You know, it's like, yeah,
Yeah. And
same thing.
there's not a lot of people that can appreciate both. You know, I remember because I lived full time in San Francisco and visited Oregon until seventh grade. And then I lived full time in Oregon and visited San Francisco. But as a city kid visiting the woods, man, you really appreciated being able to like build a tree fort or, you know, I would take my GI Joes and my Ninja Turtles and put them in the woods, and it was like they were in the real world, not just in my bedroom. And then the opposite, like living in a super small town, going to a super small high school that was like all white kids, and football was the thing, and it was not, you know, no one was into comic books, and
Mm,
very few people were into anything I was into. Um, so I had that kind of different, I don't know, fish out of water kind of
oh
thing
yeah.
where I went from being a nerd in a big school where I could find the other nerds, you know, we could all still hang out and talk about the comic books and whatever else, um, to like not really having that anymore. And that kind of pushed me more towards music. That's when
Mm,
I was a trumpet player from the age of 8. And, when I moved up to Oregon, that was like the thing I had that, you know, there was a school band. I was the only trumpet player in it. Like it was tiny, but it was a place for me where I could, I don't know, fit in with people. And, you know, a few years later, I found out that there was a kind of music, there was this ska music where you could play this dumb school band instrument and like play a real punk rock show at a real venue, and people would dance and people would have fun. And so that kind of became my thing for most of my life since then. I've been in and out of bands ever since, pretty much the whole time.
were you playing Scotch shows in Oregon or San Fran?
Oregon.
What's
So
the
I was in the
What are
school
your
band
early
up
ska
here.
bands? Are we of similar-ish age? Like, were you? I
Yeah,
was in
I'm
middle school when the ska boom happened.
right. I was in high school.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
a couple years older than you,
okay.
but
So the same because
my
I
Arrested Development predates yours, so I'm
yeah.
emotionally much younger. But,
Because yeah, well, because you know it's funny. My when I was, I remember the ska boom happened. I'm from Connecticut, so you don't get out of there without being in love with Spring Hill Jack and a ska fan.
Spring Heel Jack. I love Spring Heel Jack.
I know, me too. Oh, yeah, they're from the town next to where I grew up in Wallen. I'm from Meriden, but they were
Nice.
from Wallingford. But I wasn't aware of them until later on. But so my cousin Sarah was on tour. She played in a band called Unwound. They're
Hmm.
Washington. I'm sorry, I was going to. She lives in Oregon, but they're Washington-based band, like in that like Slater Kenny, like Sonic Youth world.
Okay.
But I remember her coming through to visit. Like my parents were going to go to see them, and I was too young. And I remember her being like, "I heard you like ska music," and she gave me like a Trojan ska, like real straight, like Rocksteady album. And of course, I didn't appreciate it or love it at
Right.
all, but I held on to
Right.
it, and then eventually would go back. Like maybe within the year later, I was like discovered it. I was like, "What? What were your first
Yeah.
ska bands?"
So I played in a band. I started playing in ska bands in like '98. Um, took a little longer to get to me because I was in a small town. But I started in a band called 007
Nice.
um, out of Eugene, Oregon. And that was like my first. I literally answered it was one of those flyers with the pieces of paper you could pull off the bottom. And my high school band teacher got it for me at the local college. Like, it's not like I was going and hanging out at colleges or going any place cool. I hadn't really been to concerts that much. I didn't know where you would even go to find a flyer trumpet player wanted. But because I was the only trumpet player at my school and my band teacher knew that I was more into punk rock and whatnot, he brought this just a little piece of paper. He brought it to school and he's like, you should call these people. They're looking for a trumpet player. And I did that. And I remember I had like an audition, like a real audition. And the band was all high school kids except the drummer, who was their teacher at their high school, their music teacher. And he was this big, tough looking black dude. And he still one of the best drummers I've ever seen, but super intimidating guy. And he's like, I don't know, 30, late 20s at least. And we're all 16, 17 years old. So I felt like I was auditioning for him, like he's the boss. Not really. But I went and did this audition and it was fun. I got to play some songs and hang out with these guys that, ska band people are nerds and we all had a lot in common and it was great. But I was pretty sure I didn't get the gig because the drummer didn't seem to like me, at all. And I heard him talking about, well, I got this other trumpet player and she's going to come and she'll be great and it'll be, problem solved, no worries. But then I got a call. This was like on a Tuesday. I think it was on Thursday. I got a call that said, hey, one of our trombone players is still out and we've got a gig on Saturday at the Wow Hall. This was like the coolest club in town, opening up for the Mad Caddies. Can you learn all of our songs and play that show? This doesn't mean you're in the band. Just do it. Right? I'm like this 17-year-old kid. And I'm like, okay. Learn their whole, I think it was a cassette tape I had of all their songs. And I played that show and then I was in the band until it broke up in 2003, I think.
Oh, damn. That's so funny. It's so funny to hear you say all that stuff about the horn players because I love the digs you kind of take at them in the Pick It Up Scott documentary in a loving way, but
of course
it made total sense.
I am one.
Yeah. Now it makes more. I'm like, oh, okay, that was more with love.
That part of the movie was the most autobiographical part. So, we are the nerds. Yeah. Even within the nerdy music, we're the nerdy people.
Yeah, I know. The happiest people ever.
So happy.
The ska kids are just like the best. Like, it just brings me so much joy. And so they did the 007s, and then so like, what's I know you like tried to make a go at it as like a musician. So I know you like have to tour Japan a ton and like get to do all that, and then. But you also talk about this and Pick It Up about the economics of the ska band. So clearly you were aware that this probably isn't going to happen for a solo. Like, I don't think I know anyone who has made a career by just playing ska music. They all had to do something else simultaneously, understandably.
Yeah, I know a few people who have made a career just playing ska music, and it's the top, It's the Goldfingers and the Real Big Fishes of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Some of those boss tones don't have to have day jobs, I think. Dickie does have a day job working on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. He's the announcer.
Is he really?
Mm-hmm. Has been for years.
I did not know that. That's insane.
So you're right. It's super rare. Nobody, or the people who do, like, they're not living the big fancy lives. They're just like getting by, working musicians. You look at like Less Than Jake. Those guys, they do side gigs, but it's like music gigs. It's like recording and stuff. But they've been doing it full time for 30 years, and it's their gig. And it's not making them rich, but it's paying the bills. And
that's my dream.
For some people, that's all you want, right?
Yeah. And Chris has a good podcast too. The Krista Makes a Podcast.
Love it. I
It's really
love it.
good.
It's like if Song Exploder only worked on songs that I love.
Yes, it's funny too because I used to see Rishi all the time at in Connecticut because 1 a.m. radio, and like I tweeted with him because I remember I had some memory of seeing 1 a.m. radio play in like somebody's garage, and then I like tweeted it to him, and he responded with the exact date. I'm like, I didn't make it up; it was real. But
That's
that's
awesome.
too funny. That blows my mind about Dickie. I mean,
Yeah.
God, yeah, I mean,
They just turned
that's
they just
nuts.
turned Song Exploder into a TV show. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is. But it was weird. Some podcasts it's just weird to see the people. Like I don't
Oh yeah, yeah, like radio. Like
like yeah, like when you see a radio DJ or a podcaster and you're like, well, that's not what you look like in my head.
yeah,
So I guess
I can
don't make a
understand
TV
that.
show.
Yeah, I knew what he because I also love the West Wing Weekly that he hosts. So like I and like was a 1
Me
a.m.
too.
range, so I had knew what he looked like because of that. But I know that experience all too well. At least I think he comes out
Oh,
on the better side of like he's more handsome than I thought he would be.
oh yeah.
Like it's
Way
not
more
like
handsome. He's
yeah,
a good looking dude.
a little uncomfortable. I'm like, stop it with those sweaters. Duh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah, and it is really good. It's very, very, very good. Which I really
So you're
like
a
that.
West Wing fan?
Yes. Oh yeah. Big time. Did you watch the special HBO did?
Oh, of course.
Like
I've watched it
yeah.
4 times. I rewatched the series once like late last year, and then
Mm,
again since the
nice.
lockdowns.
Yeah.
And I think that was my sixth time through the whole thing.
I think I'm at
It's
that.
it's like my comfort food show,
It's
you
liberal
know.
porn.
It is.
Yeah. It's yeah because I didn't see it until maybe I don't know 5 years ago. Like my wife has been a fan since high school, but then she I remember I this is context. We watched it because we got the disc through the mail through Netflix.
Okay.
And then it came to Netflix right as I finished it. So we watched it all that way. And that was more of like a have to wait. And then it came to Netflix and like it's yeah, we've gone through it a million times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love
I still have all the discs somewhere, but I watch it on Netflix because of
yeah.
convenience.
Except they messed up the Isaac Ishmael episode. They don't put any context in front of it because it's not
Right.
canon. And it's I had my friend at work just got into it. I had to explain to him like it's a special 9/11 episode, but it doesn't actually it's not canon and doesn't take place in any of the
Yeah.
West Wing universe, and it doesn't affect
Mhm.
Leo McGarry's character at all. And he's a
Right.
gem. So just leave Leo alone.
Right.
That's funny. I was making Leo jokes at work today.
That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, yeah. I,
And
I love this
and I think
trend of.
they
Oh, sorry.
only
What's
have the
that?
West Coast debate episode, right?
What's that?
Netflix only has one of the two debate episodes, the
Oh, is
live
that right?
episode. Yeah.
Oh man, my
The
favorite.
discs you gotta have for both.
Oh, I got to buy it. My favorite episode, and like getting some contention with my family about it, is the debate episode and the later. I actually my favorite season is actually the Jimmy Smith years, the last like
Mm.
six. I actually love the most. But the debate with him and Alan Alda, that's my favorite episode of West Wing, and like, uh,
Wow.
I know
It's probably my least favorite
oh that's
because
funny.
because of the format, because it's live, and
Uh,
because of like they don't cut away to anything. It's
oh,
like just a debate.
yeah.
It's the very beginning and the very end is context. But I was one of those like I like how they were juggling so many balls in every episode. There'd be an A story, a
Ooh,
B story, and a C story, and
yeah,
then that episode only has an A story.
yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could spend an hour talking about the West Wing and Chad Bartlett and Lemon, and some of the we could stay here for a second because I think one of my favorite things about watching it now is like I love media where like it's just like a little bit of that era, like a little before the internet, or I mean before the internet was being talked about in culture because it's always a little head. Like there's a great scene and I forgot what season. It's like Josh, it's on the internet. Everyone will have it by tomorrow. And like
Right.
they're trying to figure out blogs and like Mandy's cell phone in season one. Like I love that stuff.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
first season Sopranos, they're jacking DVD players and stuff like
Right.
that. I get such a kick out of that. And oh man, God, I love the West Wing. I'm such a fan of this new trend of like TV rewatch podcast host by people who are on the show because I would
Me
listen.
too.
Yeah, like the Office Ladies and the Scrubs one, and like
I'm listening to the Office Ladies one right now. I
so
fall
good.
asleep to the Office, and then I'll listen to the next episode
Yeah,
the next day.
it's
They go too slow for me though.
you mean
Who's watching the Office Ladies? It goes too slow. Who's watching one episode of The Office in a week?
oh, I know. I watch like the whole season like once a
Right.
month usually. Like I'm a big like background music. Am I gonna take a stab in the dark? You grew up a Simpsons fan?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
from the Tracy Ullman show days.
Oh wow. Yeah. Because I
Yeah, my
remember when
mom was a big Tracy Ullman fan, so we were watching the shorts,
damn,
the
that is
Simpsons
awesome.
shorts.
Because I remember when I met Sean, I had interviewed him when he was doing the first round of Kickstarter, Indiegogo for Fat Wreck in like 20, well, it must be like 2015, I think, 2016. And I just remember
Hmm.
seeing the preview for it and it having such like a little hint of Simpsons to it. And then I got that with Pick It Up in Last Blockbuster as well. Those like just little jokes that just for the Uber nerd, if you will, uh,
Oh yeah,
which is like totally like I feel like so much of my comedy development is just based off like The Simpsons and like ska was always to me it was like punk rock meets The Simpsons. It was like the two. All my friends like The Simpsons, like ska, and vice versa. It was just like, oh my god, it was so much fucking fun. And so like, what's your path from going from musician to filmmaker?
I was pretty direct. It was well, that's not true. In high school, I was the kid. Did you watch Beverly Hills 90210 when you were a
Obviously.
youngster? Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
you remember David Silver would always run around with the video camera, right? He was making in the first couple seasons
Yep.
before he got sexy and cool
And
and
rapping.
became cool and became a rapper.
You mean before
Yeah.
the soccer hooligans came to the Peach Pit and they had to
Yes.
squash it?
Yes.
See,
But he
you're
would run
old
around with the
person.
video camera.
Yep.
And so in high school, that was kind of me. They would give us some assignment, like we need you to do a report on Egypt. And I was like, what if instead I made a music video for Walk Like an Egyptian? Is that the same as a report on Egypt? Um, it's not, but I got an A because everybody laughed. I made this video and at the time it was like monumental to figure out how to put my own music in. I had to use two VCRs
Oh wow.
and
Yeah.
hook a cassette player up to the one. So you fed the audio from the cassette and the video from the other. And to edit, you would pause on the first VCR and record on the other one and unpause. And it was this whole thing. And so that was kind of how I learned like video editing and also what it felt like to like get a laugh with a video. And I
Mm.
did a ton of those projects. Every time I could, they would assign a book report or a history report or anything. And I would ask, can I do a video instead? Is that a thing? And so I did that all throughout high school. And it was like a huge video camera that took full size VHS tapes, and you put it on your shoulder
Oh
and,
yeah.
and film with that. And then when I graduated high school, I didn't have any money really, like just ever. I mean, I was playing in bands and crappy jobs and whatever. So I didn't have a video camera again for years and years because I couldn't afford one. So it kind of fell off my radar as a thing. Plus, I didn't think anybody like from Oregon can make a movie. That's insane. Don't, everybody in LA makes movies and everybody everywhere else does not. Those are the rules, right? So I focused on music for like post high school. In high school, I was into all the things and the videos and the music and the art and comics and all that. And then in college, I was really more like I played in bands and I tried to pass my classes, but it was hard.
Yeah.
And like it was like I would drop classes so I could go on tour and play in these bands, and we would tour every summer. And I was really focused on music. And occasionally I was pretty good with computers, and I was getting these early Sony Vegas was a music recording program before it could edit video. And so we were recording demos and stuff on these old ass computers. And like we kind of figured out that they could also do video around like 2003, 2004. So I would like help on the music videos we would make. Somebody else would have the camera and shoot it,
Mm.
and I was usually in them, so I wasn't filming anything, but I would help edit sometimes. Not all the time. Other people were editing too. But then later, I would play in other bands where I would be more in charge of doing the media and the graphic design and stuff, because that's what I went to school for. Um, and so it was real gradual from then on, from like 2005 on. I was always editing video, and I was doing like my job out of college was Flash animations when Flash was the thing on the internet.
Oh
So
yeah,
those dumb like click to skip the Flash intro on a web
yeah.
page.
Like
Yeah,
is that pre
I
YouTube?
made those.
That was you.
Oh yeah, way pre
Yeah,
YouTube,
I remember
and way
this.
like, and it was because the internet wasn't fast enough. So Flash was vector based and could load really, really fast. So you could make videos. They weren't really video. It was only cartoons, and not even cartoons, but like the text would move across the screen, or like a light would flash, or whatever the thing was. Um, but I did that job for like 6 years. I did that as contract work and played in bands, and that's all I did. That was my job, and it didn't pay. I was making like $12,000 a year, but I was living pretty cheap and playing in bands, and that was okay. Um, and then after a while, uh, hmm, eventually, my wife and I moved to Washington, D.C. We were living in Portland, Oregon, and we moved to Washington, D.C. for her work. She wanted to like make a difference and do, impact the world. She was a social worker, and then she wanted to do healthcare policy research in Washington, D.C.
That's incredible.
And she's awesome. And we moved there, and she did do that. And I found new bands to play with, and they were, I played in a ska band, and I played in like a rock band. I play guitar too. And those bands were taking it a little bit more seriously. They were like really trying to make it more than, they were trying to make it financially viable or whatever. So it was not as much like, oh, just work this part-time job and do this. It was like focus on the band. And when those bands started to make videos, that's kind of when the DSLRs started surfacing, the Canon 5D and all that, which made legit looking filmmaking much, 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 much cheaper. Like at that point, you could get one of those cameras, the cheaper versions, for $500-600, and stuff looked really good. And so after we had paid somebody to shoot a music video, we were getting ready to do the next one, and I kind of just volunteered, like, well, can we take some of that money and I'll just buy a camera, and then we can have infinite music videos, for the price of one music video. It didn't really go down that way. I think I ended up buying it myself, but the idea stuck, and I started doing music videos, and then started doing music videos for other bands and making a little bit of money on the side. And then I started doing, like, in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of like organizations, like trade organizations, educational organizations, healthcare organizations are all based in Washington, D.C. So I guess I just knew enough people where I started to get hired to do these like corporate videos. And it was right around the time that Apple had decided not to support Flash anymore. So my job was disappearing out from under me.
Oh,
So I basically just transitioned to video. I got really lucky with the timing and started doing these corporate videos and music videos. And I shot weddings for a couple of years and started to make pretty good money as a videographer. Never would have called myself a filmmaker, but I was making videos full-time, promotional videos for bars, restaurants, all these things, CEOs of big companies. And that was going great, and the bands were going great and all that. And DC kind of got to be too stressful for us, and it's pretty annoying of a place to live, just traffic and it's hectic and everybody's go, go, go. And everybody's there to like make a name for themselves in the world of working in these places, because it's like the national headquarters of this or that, or
Yeah.
everybody wants a political career. So we decided to move back to Oregon, and this was 6 years ago. I moved back, and all of a sudden there weren't these big organizations, and I wasn't shooting weddings, and there's bands, but nobody has a budget for a music video. So pretty much all of my work disappeared when we moved back to Oregon. But I had this skill set, I'd shot all these interviews and like really cool looking footage. And I had just enough knowledge to be dangerous, where I was like, I think I might be able to make a movie with what I know how to do. And
Yeah.
I certainly have lots of free time now because I basically was unemployed. Um, and so that was 6 years ago now. And it took a while for me to kind of get momentum going, but I made my first movie. I think it was finished within 2 years of moving here. And I've been in production now. Like the Blockbuster movie has taken almost 4 years by the time it's out. So it's been nonstop movie making since then, since like 2016.
That's pretty incredible. What was your first film again?
It's called Here's to Life. It's a documentary about a band called The Refreshments that not a lot
That's
of people
right.
know about. They're a one-hit wonder band from the 90's. They also did the theme song from King of the Hill. And
That's why
that
I
was,
know the name.
yeah, that was my first film, and it seemed like sort of an attainable, I just emailed the band and said, can I make a movie about you? And they said, well, we don't know why anyone would want to, but okay. And I did. And we did a Kickstarter, just like, most little indie films, because I didn't know. I still don't know how you like get money to make a movie. Like you hear about people getting investors and like
Yeah.
blah, blah. I've never seen anything like that. But we did a Kickstarter. We raised like $12,000. Movie ended up costing $13,000 to $15,000 to make, and it over a couple of years made some money. Like it was a profitable movie, just sort of marketing to that band's fan base, and getting it up on Amazon like you do. And so that really hooked me into like, well, if I up the scale and I, do something like ska music. I love ska music. I know I can tell the story correctly. I was there. I lived it. It's my life story as told by my musical heroes. So if I can get like all the big names in ska to be in my movie, then that one could make money too. And then Blockbuster happened around the same time, where I just stumbled into this, one of the last few remaining Blockbuster videos, and I was like, at that time I had made one movie, and I said, well, I'm a filmmaker. Can I just start filming here? Because I've made a movie, I promise. And I brought my movie and put it on the shelf at Blockbuster, and I was so proud. Um, and now it's like, that's all I've been doing. I've been breathing and sleeping and eating movies for like 4 years straight with no time off. I don't really get to play music anymore. I just make movies. So
Well, I mean, it's so interesting to me too, like from the talking beginning, but it feels like that the pop culture has kind of been in your DNA anyway this whole time from like childhood to now anyway. So it's almost like you get to look back and be like all those years with the Ninja Turtles and the G.I. Joes and all that stuff, like in a way that you could never have predicted, really paid off. And like, especially
well,
with
yeah,
ska, which is a genre that has been, I mean, you're the one who said it very well in your document, and Pick It Up is just like, it's just so misunderstood and no one ever fully gets it. And I really think Pick It Up was the first time I could show it to my wife or my friends and be like, this is what I was into. Or like just a 5-minute intro with Tim Armstrong explaining the history of ska. I was like, this solves all the arguments. you
right,
know,
right.
like I see it in your work and it makes sense. Like I get it. I'm like, yeah, pop. It's like I'm one of those people too. It's like pop culture. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like I don't have religion. For me, it just means something
Right.
that I can't
Yeah,
really
for me too.
explain.
Like I never I think I was forced to go to Sunday school a couple times when I was a little kid, but it never took. Um, but man, did I believe in Star Wars from the age of, I don't know, 5 when I first saw it. And it's, yeah, that's my religion.
Yeah,
It's there, and it's most movies, not just Star Wars. It's like there's good and there's evil, and you can find the moral fabric, just like you can in the Bible, just like you can in a lot of places. It's stories that convey some kind of lesson or some kind of moral, and so yeah, I learned a lot from those little PSAs at the end of the GI Joe episodes that were like, you know, don't play with matches, and now and knowing is
yeah.
half the battle. And I still played with matches, so
It's and so many people too. You hear now, like all the kids who played D&D when they were younger are now like the Russo brothers and stuff like that. Like it's like
right.
everyone like the amount of storytelling that you learned as a child from like I still have never played D&D, but like I was like, oh man, that's pretty fucking rad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you see, like, it's cool to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but the fact that when I was a teenager, I loved the movie Revenge of the Nerds.
mhm,
Right?
yeah,
It was I identified as a nerd. I was not one of the cool kids, and so that movie gave me like this sense of hope. And then over the past 20 years, to see it almost come true. Like all the richest people are the nerds, and all the highest grossing movies are based on the comic books that I read. That, and video games are now the most popular medium for storytelling. And
yeah.
it's like all the things we got made fun of in the 90's for being into, that's the cool stuff now, you
Yeah,
know?
it's great. I love it. I absolutely. I'm a Johnny come lately when it comes to the superhero stuff. I totally didn't get into. I was late for that, but no, yeah, it's true. It's there's something about it. It's like I was like, is Star Wars even nerd culture anymore? Like it's so a part of the pop fabric, and I mean, especially with
Yeah.
Mandalorian, which that could be a whole nother hour right there. Oh my god,
So good.
Supatano coming up.
I'm so excited.
Uh, yeah, my wife is the two. She's actually the Star Wars nerd of the two of us. Like I didn't get into Star Wars until the Force Awakens, and even then I like them. It's actually Mandalorian is the first time I would actually call myself like it's making me go into a really deep dive. But so when we were watching Last Blockbuster, and when was it James Arnold showed up, I just jumped out of her fucking chair.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
He's like nerd famous. Like the people who know who he is love him. And then everybody else is like, who's that guy? I guess he does voices. I don't know.
I think that's like my dream. I just want to get nerd with financial success as well. Like yeah, like nerd fame seems like to be where it's at, and like especially voice actors, people are nice to them on the internet. Like it's a nice like I'm sure you'd watch. I know that voice.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
it's
love it.
like all those people like they just seem so nice. And yeah, so I know it's so funny. I heard that your story of the ska doc came to be like literally from a Facebook post, which is like the original pulling a tab off a flyer, which is kind of how everything happens nowadays, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that's pretty crazy. And now, did you like feel prepared to like take that mantle of like I'm gonna give the voice to ska of the '90s, or was it just kind of like steamrolled?
Yes and no. Like I knew I could make a movie because I had made a movie. Um, and I knew that it mattered to me. Like the story mattered to me because I was one of the kids listening to ska, and other people would make fun. And at my high school, it was people were into Tool and Nine Inch Nails and country music and some hip hop and
Yeah,
no ska.
yeah, it's my school too.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's everybody's high school.
or Dave Matthews Band when I was in high school. Oh, like the
Yes.
yeah, that was the other big one.
Yeah. So I didn't know, like, I didn't have confidence that I could like do it right or like nail it, but I knew I wouldn't. That I knew there were some wrong things that I wouldn't do.
Yeah,
That if somebody else made a movie about ska, it might not come from the right place. And I don't know that to be true. I think anyone who's going to spend 3 years of their life diving into a topic has got to love it to a certain degree. But I also know that, also I'm one of the only people I know from my ska bands in the 90s that was still playing, like actively
Yeah.
playing ska music. So I felt like it had been such a big part of my life that I, I don't know, I had more confidence than I should have because I really didn't know what I was doing, but I still was like, might as well go for it. And that came from just playing in bands and that sort of DIY culture of like, well, man, we gotta make an album, but we can't afford the studio time. Somebody learn Pro Tools,
Hmm.
That's I guess we'll do it. Do it ourselves.
No, I love that. I love that attitude so much, and like I just like that. Fuck it, someone else is gonna fuck it up. Like, might as well be me. Not thank God. I mean, obviously you didn't fuck it up by any means, but it's. I mean, were there a lot of people like? Did you? I mean, that you must have like known at some level from playing with or touring with, like the Aquabats or like Less Than Jake. I'm sure somewhere down the line you must have played with some of these cats or Suburban Legends or.
Most of them.
I had to shout out the fact that you had the guy from the OC Supertones in it made me so fucking happy because I unabashedly love the Supertones.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, we went into it. Ray, my producer on that, who was also the bass player in my ska bands back in the early 2000s, um, he was also still active in the world of ska. So between us, we were still pretty connected. It's not a big community. There's whatever 20 bands that are still playing from back then, and you can't sort of can't not know them.
Mm.
If you're in the scene, it's not a very big scene. And so there were a few people I didn't know personally, but because we knew some people, because like Ray knew Angelo from Fishbone and T-Bone from Save Ferris, and I knew the guys from the Pie Tasters, and we had these connections. They sort of spirals out and people vouch for you and they're like, this guy, he plays in bands, he's cool. Or like after we would get done with a couple interviews, the people would be like, these guys seem like they know what they're doing, or they're at least taking the topic seriously.
Hmm.
I think a lot of ska bands, sometimes they do get that gotcha journalism of like, they really just want you there to make fun of you.
Yeah, yeah, and I can definitely see that with ska. And man, I won't spend too much on. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen it, please go watch it, pick it up because it's incredible. And then what I found so fascinating, like I said, this is for most people, but so many little things had to happen for you to land this way. So then I know you moved from DC to Bend, Oregon with your wife, and then there just happens to be a Blockbuster there. But at this point, it's not the last Blockbuster,
Nope.
and it and just like how fucking random. And then how random is it that the one in Alaska closes and not the one in Bend?
Right.
Like and then
Yeah,
thank
that
God you claimed
happened.
your stake.
Right. So that one, it's less personal. I mean, I love Blockbuster, and I was not just a card carrying member, but when they had their subscription service, I had that, and I got their discs by mail instead of Netflix. Like I was the Blockbuster fan.
Yeah,
Like I went down with the ship, but
that's
I
too
had applied
funny.
to work at Blockbuster when I was a teenager and did not get the job. Unfortunately, I'm not bitter.
Hey, there's still time. I'm just
I,
saying we'll
I
hire you.
I have spent a lot of time in Blockbuster over the past 4 years, and I feel like I've paid my dues. I've put the
Yeah,
time in.
I think you did.
I
You're
have
doing
not
what you
had to do
did.
inventory, but
Oh yeah. I worked in
it's
retail
been
for
a while.
years. Ugh. Ugh.
But yeah, when I moved back to Bend here, there were actually two Blockbusters in Bend that first year, and the one right by my house that's like, I could walk to it. The week I moved here went out of business. They had the store closing clearance, and I bought a bunch of DVDs and Xbox games because I had done that several times at closing video stores because those are the smoking deals, and I love physical media. I'll buy the disc for a video game even though it's faster and easier to get the download, and I'll still get the Blu-ray of a movie that's on Netflix, but if it has like one special feature or audio commentary or something, because that was a huge part of like how I learned not how to make movies, but how movies were made was through
Mm,
DVDs and director's commentaries and
yeah.
behind the scenes stuff. So I'm still a physical media collector because they haven't really figured that out, on digital. And
Yeah, really.
I'm not an Apple person, so I don't use iTunes, which is the only place that has special features really.
Yeah.
From what I've been told, I don't use
Me
Apple's
either.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm just.
But Netflix doesn't have,
I know.
every once in a while they'll make a making of special
Yep.
or something, but it's its own program.
Yeah, I'm the
Um,
same way. I think the way I explained it, the way I would explain it for anyone is like Clerks 2 is one of my favorite movies. But I've watched the making of Clerks 2 more, the documentary that came with the bonus disc, more than I watched Clerks 2. I like
yeah,
making more stuff more than the actual. Like I just rather
yeah,
watch a documentary about the thing I love more than the thing I love. Like yeah,
yeah. When I go to rewatch a movie, the default is with the director's commentary on.
yes,
If it's a
I
movie I've already seen, that's
yes.
the first way I want to watch it, is because it's like I'm watching it with my buddy, and my buddy is Steven Spielberg.
Yep. You know what the first one for me that got me super into was Simpsons was the first, at least for me, they were the first DVDs I bought where they actually put like time and effort into the DVD to make them worth the purchase. And like I
Yeah,
would just listen to all of the commentary and like, yeah, all the same thing. I mean, obviously I'm a podcast fanatic, as I'm sure there's a huge crossover of people who watch the DVD commentary and listen to podcasts
yes.
as well. But yeah, no, I totally get that. Did you happen to see the one that the making of I wish it was for the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. They made a Amazon. It's on Amazon now. It's about the making of that movie. I forgot what it was
Yep.
called.
It's its own feature,
Yeah.
Roadshow or
Oh my
something.
God.
I know the guy who made it. We're Facebook friends, and we talked about it. Oh,
I don't know him, but I know Sean knows. I've heard of his name through Sean, and then I think I know his name's Josh Roush. I don't know him
yeah,
personally,
yeah,
but he's a great director. Josh, if you hear this, I loved
yeah.
it very much, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on the name, but I refuse to look it
Me
up.
too.
But it's on Amazon. I thought it was fantastic, and as a huge Kevin Smith fan, it was a side of him I don't think I've ever thought I had ever seen before. So I really
Yeah, it was
liked it.
very in depth and like real, and also,
Humanized him a
he's
lot for
turned
me.
such a corner. He's changed so much since his
Yeah,
heart attack that
yeah.
it is different. Because after that, I watched the Mallrats, the new Blu-ray, the new special edition just came out.
I have to go
So I
get
just
that.
watched the new special features, and it also has the old special features, so you can see like 90's Kevin Smith making the movie
Oh,
and just different philosophies. And Mallrats was such a, it's been my cautionary tale of like, you're an indie filmmaker. If somebody offers you the big money to make the studio movie, be careful, because look what it did to Kevin Smith. Look what Mallrats was. But I love Mallrats. I
oh,
don't
it's one
think
of my
it's the black
favorites.
sheep,
Yeah.
but it certainly did not make money.
No. And do you happen to listen to the podcast Going Off Track?
I don't.
Oh, you would love it. It's well, it was Jonah Bear and Stephen Smith from Fuse, but then they have parted ways. Now Benny from Gaslight Anthem took over. Jeff Rosenstock, it was like on probably the most recent episode. But the guy
Okay.
Brad, he played in the Goops and he's on the Mallrats soundtrack. It's a very much you podcast. All those guys have been on here. They're all really Benny and all them are super really nice. Yeah, so it's just too funny. And so I remember when we did the roundtable, I remember getting to tell you this really briefly. So my uncle owned like a few video stores in Boston. It's either Video Work or Video Time. Uncle Greg, if I got that wrong, I'm sorry. So growing up, we were not allowed to like Blockbuster. Like it was the corporate behemoth that we hated, even though we grew up in Connecticut, not even where he was. So like at first, when I saw the preview for this, which I actually had seen the preview for the Last Blockbuster before Sean even had like connected us all together. So I was like, oh, cool, I actually really want to see that. But I was like, I wasn't going into it like I give two shits about Blockbuster, because I was like, whatever, I don't care. But I found that you balanced the tone so well of like, now I do care about the story about the company of Blockbuster a little bit, and what you did with the Last Blockbuster. But that story that you really found about the community and the irony of going from indie to the corporate behemoth, and then the behemoth dying and still being around, and like Sandy and her family, like
Yeah.
I think I know it says on Facebook, like, it's been a rough 10 months for a lot of us, and I've watched it I think
Yeah.
twice with my wife, and both times I come out of it with like hope and optimism for the world, like a ska concert, you
Yep.
know?
I
Like,
mean, I certainly have a tone. My first movie
yeah.
is similarly toned, and that's just me. Like I'm very careful not to say anything bad about like serious documentaries because they're important and I respect the people who make them. But I have a hard time watching like the hard hitting documentaries where you come away from it, like sad or you feel guilty. Like,
Hmm.
uh, you know, I don't eat meat, but I used to eat meat, and I would watch documentaries about how it's horrible to eat meat, and you don't feel good, and you don't feel good for a while after
Yeah.
you watch one of those until Super Size Me came out, and it was fun and it was funny and there were jokes, and like
And
even the
animation.
Michael Moore documentaries are the little tongue in cheek, right? They're serious topics, but he's a wacky, weird dude. And so I always kind of gravitated towards the more like quirky, and also with pop culture docs, like, you see the shows that are just like, this is a documentary about Star Wars action figures. All right, great, I'm in.
Oh, I love
I
that show.
know
Oh,
it's not
this
going to
one is
be
the
sad.
newest.
Yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
show,
yeah.
and there's a film before it,
I love
Plastic
those.
Galaxy. There's a
Ooh.
feature just about Star Wars toys. But those kind of things, like, going in, it's not going to ruin your day to watch
Hmm.
it, and that's kind of what I wanted to make, especially with the Blockbuster one. And I was the same way. Um, I loved the independent video stores, and I love movies so much that I would go to the independent store to rent the trauma movies or the weird indie horror movie or whatever the thing was, but they would never have the new releases because they'd have one or two copies. They'd always be out. So I would also go to Blockbuster. I would like drive across town and go to two, and so I'd have my movies from this place and also my movie from Blockbuster that was just, the new, it was Dogma, right? Because Dogma came out and they had
Yep.
50 copies and the local place had one copy and it was always gone. So I totally get the people that hate Blockbuster, and that's valid. They were the Walmart of video stores and they came in and beat up the little guys. But when I found out, when we first started making the movie, when I found out that this store, not only were they an independent store, but they kind of got bullied into becoming a Blockbuster. Like, it wasn't by choice. It was, join us or die, basically. When I found
Yeah.
out that's when I was like, oh, okay, we have a story. This is about the good guys. These are the rebels. This is not the Empire. They got sort of assimilated into the Empire, but then when the Empire blew up, they were still rebels at heart.
Yeah. That's like such a metaphor for right now. For like forgiveness for people, like, and stuff. But yeah, it's funny. And this documentary, you had, I mean, literally every single person in there, like, that I'm just a personal fan of, like Paul Scheer, Ron Funches, Kevin Smith, all these great people. And the part of the movie that honestly that hit the hardest for me was when Sandy's husband was just talking about how he's so proud of her. Literally brought tears to my eyes. Like that
Isn't that
part,
lovely?
I found myself like walking away from this movie, and as much as I love Ron Funches and Kevin Smith and all these wonderful people, I was just like, I love Sandy. I don't know her, but I just want to hug her, and she just comes off as just the sweetest, most kind-hearted person, and it didn't
Yeah.
seem like that was for show for the movie. Like it seemed very genuine.
No, that she's one of the most genuine and kindest people that I've ever met. And I've had the fortune of kind of for the movie having to be around her a lot for 3.5, 4 years. Even now, we're doing interviews together and I have to go to the store to stock up the shelf that our movie is on and get them
Oh, so you
movie
are working there.
posters. I do work at Blockbuster on occasion. I guess I volunteer at Blockbuster. Is that a thing? But no, she's just, that's really her. What you see in the movie is her. She's genuine. She's awesome. And she's all heart. And that, early on too, we definitely decided, it's a documentary and we knew we were going to have like comedians and actors and directors talk about Blockbuster. We didn't know there was going to be a star. We thought we'd talk to like 5 of the employees and kind of build up the world of the store. But after meeting her and talking to her, it was like, oh, this is about her. She is the store. She's been here. Now she's been there 16 years. Um, but there wouldn't be a Last Blockbuster without Sandy. It
Yeah.
would have closed. I mean, the owners have told me, like, without her there, there's no reason to keep it open. No one else cares as much as Sandy does.
And it's so much less about the corporation of Blockbuster, which I love the scene with Tom Case, the former CEO, and he's just like, yeah, I see. There's no like there. I'm sure you get the question like, are video stores ever coming back? I mean, I don't think so. And he's like, no, absolutely not. And you did a really nice thing in the doc where like the tone of it kind of for a second he kind of looked like an asshole, but you agree with him, and then like you could hear the director coming from the side and explaining. He's like, oh yeah, that must, and then he like literally explains what you're thinking. I'm like, even
Right.
he came off really nice. Like the CEO of
Yeah.
Blockbuster, he came off really well, and like I don't disagree with him. Like I don't think pre-pandemic or not, I don't think video stores were ever going to come back because VHSs fucking suck. Blockbuster is terrible. There's no fucking art on the thing. There's no value to it. Like I mean, the internet killed the independent retail of that stuff because, like, a lot of like my uncle would always I've learned as an adult. I would learn this stuff as an adult, so it was all age appropriate. But like the majority of their income was from the adult film section. Like that's where they
Right.
made their money. It's like how movie theaters make their money in refreshments. Like you know,
Mm-hmm.
so it was just so it's just like I felt no love lost for like Blockbuster closing, but and then now I'm actually happy that they're still on. Not that there's a Blockbuster because it's Sandy and that wonderful community that has been built around it. It's such a beautiful story that you have carved out.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the story of the store and of Sandy's journey and sort of how this small town is still kind of holding on to these ancient ways of renting videos. It would be just as good of a story if it was called, Bend Video or local video store, whatever. But people, I don't think, as somebody who like browses for movies online, I think people wouldn't have watched it, or it'd be a harder sell.
You'd
It'd
have
be
people
hard to
like
hook
me.
people in.
Yeah.
I mean, people who's going to watch, and there are documentaries about the local independent video stores, and they're great. And I watch them, but they're never going to get through. Also, you're not going to get Ron Funches and Kevin Smith to sit down for an interview
Yeah.
unless you say, hey, we're making a movie about Blockbuster Video. Because everybody was like, oh, yeah, Blockbuster. Yeah, yeah. And people like Paul Scheer and Adam Brody who worked at Blockbuster, you don't get that part of the story if it's just about your local independent
Mm-hmm.
video store. So I'm just really happy that it kind of worked out where we got to do both. Like it's about Blockbuster, but it's really about this independent store. So we get to like trick people who are come for the Blockbuster and stay for the small town video store.
Yeah. Now, when Captain Marvel came out, were you just like, fuck yes, this is going to help me out?
I mean, so
Talk about good luck, huh?
everything that happened, we started the movie in early 2017. And at that time, there were a dozen Blockbusters left. They were in 3 in Oregon, some in Texas, and a bunch in Alaska. And I was also working on the ska documentary, at the same time. So we would get like these news updates from Sandy. She would call or text and be like, well, there's only 4 left, or now we're down to 5, or, oh, we're the last one in the state. And we would come and we'd film for a little while. And I'd go back to the ska doc, but we would shoot the interviews like back to back. Like the Lloyd Kaufman interview was in New York. So we shot that when I shot the Slackers interview for the ska doc because I was in New York. We don't have like extra budget
Sure.
to go to places twice. So we did the and the guy from Smash Mouth is in both movies. We just extended the interview and talked to him about both things.
I was going to ask you that because it's even the same backdrop.
Yeah, it's the same
That's
clip,
awesome.
the same video file. It's just the beginning and the end. One is ska, one
So
is
smart.
Blockbuster. So it was always, Blockbuster was happening, but I was making the ska movie. And I would keep hearing these things like, somebody, and once you tell people you're making a Blockbuster movie, everybody texts you when something happens. Like when the Captain Marvel trailer dropped, I probably got 25 text messages saying, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Did you see the Captain Marvel trailer? It's got Blockbuster Video in it. You like Blockbuster. You should, I don't know, go to the, I don't know what people expected from me. It still happens whenever anything Blockbuster related hits the news, right? They just did an Airbnb with the store that, we decided, we knew it was going to happen, but we're like, we got to wrap this movie up. Things are going to keep happening forever. Eventually, we just have to end it.
Mm.
But that happened, and I get, all these messages and tagged in tweets and Facebook posts. It's like, you like Blockbuster, you should know this story. But that kept happening for years. The John Oliver thing with the Russell Crowe jockstrap,
Yep.
and when the Alaska stores closed and this became the last one, it was almost a constant news cycle about Blockbuster for the whole 3.5 years we were shooting the movie. And all of that was just good luck for us. We couldn't have planned for Captain Marvel to use Blockbuster as an icon for the 90s, a nostalgia beacon, really. But from a storytelling standpoint, it made perfect sense. And then we got to use that clip and say, look, nostalgia for this thing is hitting a peak. It's like right now, everybody cares about the 90s. The young kids are like, oh, it's 90s, it's retro, just like the 70s were when we were in high school.
Yeah.
And you also get that thing where people like us grow up and now we've got jobs, and with jobs comes a little bit of disposable income. So we're the target audience for things. So of course they're going to put Blockbuster in the new Marvel movie because it's going to scratch that itch for the nostalgia in the back of your brain. It's like, oh man, I went to there. I remember that.
No, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's every few years you'd see like a pop-up video on the news, like there's a Blockbuster video and whatever. Like that was always like a thing. Like there was always like, it was just like it became like a thing on the internet, and it's just so
Right.
funny. And just I can't believe by happenstance you just happened to had moved to that town. You must thank your wife every day. Like, thank you for making us move to Bend, Oregon, and probably for other
I,
reasons.
I am, yeah, very grateful. It's a beautiful town. It's a good town to be quarantined in. Lots of outdoor nature stuff to do.
How
But
has Sandy's reaction been to the film? Like, because she seems like a normal person, and now she's like kind of a
yes,
celebrity.
yeah. So, well, she was a celebrity before, and we talk about that in the movie. But when the news hit, she was on, every talk show wanted Sandy on to talk about the last
Yeah, that's
blockbuster in the
so
world, and
cool.
she was all over the place. And so she kind of developed a, not a persona. She is who she is, but she got used to the idea of being a quote unquote celebrity. She's certainly a local celebrity. Everybody around here knows Sandy, and they know Blockbuster. But we our world premiere was pushed due to COVID for a couple of months, and then in the summer we got to do it at a drive-in theater, which was really cool. I never thought that would happen, but circumstances being what they are, drive-in theaters were the way. And she was there at the world premiere in her pickup truck with her husband and her kids in the other
Oh,
van, and all the employees from Blockbuster came and they were all so supportive. And she's not the kind of person who will watch herself in stuff. So I think she doesn't necessarily watch all those news clips, but we put them
mm,
all in the movie, so she had to see them. So it's a double dose of like, you're in this movie, but also here's all the things you've been doing for the past 2 years.
yeah.
And we're, reliving her life on screen. But she says she likes it. She's still very nice. She's not like excited about it. She's not like, look at me, I'm a movie star. She's got work to do. She's still running a Blockbuster,
That's so
but
cool.
she's happy. And now the movie is at the store and people are renting it and coming back to Blockbuster, and they'll buy a copy and they'll have her sign it. And it's
Oh,
pretty awesome.
that's, I don't know. It just makes me so happy. And you did this too. I thought really well with the ska doc, and with Pick It Up with this, where you have Doug Benson come fly out to come see it, and seeing him walk into it, like how you did with the Pick It Up, where like kind of Scott is like the avatar for the rest of us. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that would be my experience if I was Doug Benson. And again, huge Doug Benson fan. I've been listening to the Benson, I'm sure, like for his podcast for years. So, like,
Yeah.
you couldn't have not checked off all the boxes of people like I love to see pop in on both of your films. So I was like, what the fuck, man? This is perfect. But like, he just looked so like I'm a huge Doug Loves Movies fan as well. And like,
Yeah.
now, he's a great stoner comedian and a stoner comedian name, but he's a movie like Leonard Maltin status of knowledge. To
Well,
see
that's
him,
why we put him in the movie.
oh,
That's why Doug Loves Movies fan too. That's why he and Sam Levine are in the movie
I
because I knew
love Sam Levine.
Loves
That's right.
movies from the Leonard Maltin game on
Yep.
Doug Loves Movies. He always wins. He's the ringer. He's Lil Wolverine.
Yeah.
So we went to him first. Well, I'm sure we reached out at the same time, but he was the first one to be like, sure, I'll do a documentary interview. Why not?
That's so nuts.
But yeah, Doug, we shot his interview first in LA, and I actually wasn't even there for that. I had coordinated it, but my producer, co-filmmaker on the project, he was down there shooting that interview and sort of just floated the idea of like, wouldn't it be fun for you to come to Blockbuster? And Doug was like, yeah, sure. And then a few months later, he hit us up. He's like, yeah, I think I will come to Blockbuster. And he paid for his own flight and put himself up in a hotel. Like, he did that. We just documented him going to Blockbuster.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's what kind of guy he is. He's awesome.
He's someone who doesn't get a good enough. Like, people don't understand the fucking genius of that guy. Like, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fellow documentary filmmaker as well,
Yeah.
and stuff. But like, God, he's the best. That makes me so happy. That's really cool. That is really
Me too. He just gave us a shout out on Doug Loves Movies, and we didn't ask him to do that. He just does it. He's like, I got a new movie coming out. Doug plugs. And it's
That's
like,
really nice.
it's
And
so awesome.
what was your experience getting to interview Kevin Smith as a fellow Smith head, or I don't know what we call ourselves, but fan of his work?
Sure. Yeah. Huge fan. Like, he would be number one on my list of influential filmmakers.
Mm.
You know, Clerks was for years, my favorite movie, and I'll still put it on. I have the VHS in my office. I have an old TV and a VHS that I could put on and then work, you know, so it's next to me with the sound off. I'll just put Clerks, Mallrats, whatever. But no, I was a huge Kevin Smith fan, and those special features, and seeing how, you know, he did his first movie, putting it on credit cards and just sort of didn't ask permission, just made a movie. That was definitely literally going through my mind when I made my first movie. Is like, you can just make a movie. I know because Kevin Smith did it, right? Like, he kind of set set my expectations of what could be done. And then, yeah, I've followed him forever. I listen to his podcasts. I'm a big fan. All the movies. They're not as influential to me now. Like, I still watch them and laugh, but it's not like I'm basing my life around, you know, Clerks 2 as much as Clerks 1, you know?
Yeah.
There's a difference. But it was I think it was the only time in all three of my movies where I was like legitimately starstruck and like in awe of the person I was having to work with. And he wasn't having a good day when we shot that interview. He, something was going on with his daughter, and just seeing him, he kind of showed up late and he was like not in a great mood, but super kind and super, like, he turned it on. He knew what we were trying to get, and he was super professional about it. But he also, you know, hung out with us after and was talking about movies and talking about Blockbuster and all this stuff. And he didn't have to do. I mean, he didn't have to do it at all.
Yeah.
It's easy for him to just say no, thank you. But to spend that time, and it's something really unique because of the type of movies I make. Like, when I meet like my heroes in ska music, it's to sit down for 2 hours and talk about ska music. Mm-hmm. And when I meet my heroes in the movie world, it's to sit down for 2 hours and talk about movies. You know, it's not like, oh, because I casually met Bill Murray. We did not sit down for 2 hours and talk about Ghostbusters like I would have wanted.
Yep.
You know, we just asked if I could take a picture, and then he goes, and that's it. So it's not just meeting your heroes, but it's like connecting about the thing, the reason that
Mhm.
that's someone I look up to. Um, so it was super impactful for me, the Kevin Smith day. Um, but he's, you know, a much, much busier guy. Like I can get a hold of Doug Benson right now. I cannot get through to Kevin Smith. I have no way to get in touch. There's no, you know, he knows he's in this movie and it's coming out, I think.
Yeah, I've
But
heard him talk about it on Fat Man Beyond.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah. I
Cool.
listened to. Yeah, I've heard him shout it out. I probably tweeted you. I got super excited for you.
Sweet. Well,
Yeah,
that's great.
and I'm like,
But see, I don't know that because you know, he's still up on another level to me.
sure.
And that's, I mean, maybe that's how it's supposed to be,
Yeah,
you know, I kind of think.
yeah. No, he's hard to get a hold of. So then he gave you a lot of time. Well, at least in the doc, he's in it like a good amount, and he really performed really
Yeah.
well. He played real well. Like,
No, he gave
yeah,
us a lot of time, and you know, we got to do it at his bar there where he does the
Scum and
podcast.
Villainy. Oh, you got to go
That's at
there.
Scum and Villainy. Yeah, we
Oh,
spent
that's
the day there
right.
when they were closed. We actually shot another interview there with JC from Scum and Villainy, the owner, the guy who runs the place, because he used to be a manager at Blockbuster.
Oh, I love
He didn't make it
JC.
into the movie, but he's on the DVD. He's on the special features.
Oh, I cannot wait to buy
He had
that.
some fun. He's actually in the original Kickstarter video that we did because he
Oh,
did
that's
have
so
some great
cool.
anecdotes, but our editor decided we had too many people. Clearly, he hadn't seen the ska movie.
No, I totally understand. Like, I feel like at my core, it sounds like both of us might have that in similar our personality types of people who make these things. Like the podcast is like always secretly just a way to talk to the people. Like you're right, it's the same thing. I don't like autographs. I don't like that. It's actually kind of selfish if you think about it. It's like I don't want just a quick interaction. It's the same reason I like watching documentaries. It's like I just always need more, and like getting
Right.
to talk to people that you look up to or admire or watch from afar. It's and some people are famous, and sometimes it's people that just mean a lot to you, and they're just like, I just did a band, whatever. But you're like,
Right.
so
Right.
it's a wonderful experience. If anyone has the opportunity, find a way to trick people into to interview them. It's one of the coolest things you could
Yes.
do.
Yeah, I do. I think about that a lot. Whenever we get bad news, like we don't get into a film festival or, you know, oh, we didn't get that Netflix deal or whatever the thing is. I think about like 18-year-old me and what I would have given to like spend a day with Kevin Smith talking about movies or an afternoon with the guys from Real Big Fish and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones talking about ska. And like, that's what I do for a living now.
Yeah,
That's the craziest
that's
thing.
so cool.
Like, I
Yeah,
can't even. So if the movies flop, if nobody likes them and they don't ever get anywhere and they never make any money, it was still super worth it because of the experience of making them.
sure.
Plus, I got to hang out with Sandy for 3 years.
Yeah,
She's the
that's so cool. Yeah, and I don't think that will be the case with Blockbuster. It seems like I'm hoping it does. Hopefully, it's very financially viable for you. I really can't gush over how much I loved it. Like it truly is one of the best It's one of my favorite documentaries I've ever watched. I'll give like if I'm giving like my top five,
yeah, yeah.
they're not gonna make any sense. But the Made in America OJ is up there. Cocaine
Mm-hmm.
Cowboys is up there. Last Blockbuster is up there. I put a Fat Wreck up in there. Like I know Sean, but I really like a Fat Wreck. I watch a lot of drug war documentaries as well.
Sure.
I forgot the business behind getting high. I much watched that like a million fucking times as well. Like, I know my interests are all over the place. Like, my professional background, I'm a case manager at a psychiatric hospital, and like, so I work with like substance abuse and all that stuff. So like, my interests are both like mental health and then obsessive pop culture. So like, the docs I tend to watch are either super sad or this. So
Oh man.
it's nice to watch a happy one again.
Oh, that's why we make them.
Yeah.
I feel as though I can speak for every filmmaker, but for one person to appreciate it and like connect or make somebody feel better on an off day, that's why, you know, that's,
Yeah. I can't imagine it. So, and then I forgot to mention this too. I didn't realize. I remember when Ska Doc came out. My our mutual friends Chuck and Brad from the Chuck and Brad podcast. They did they hosted it. I think in Boston, New York, and I think I was supposed to go to one of them. Of course, like my kid got sick and couldn't go. Shit, so I missed it. But I listened to their podcast. I don't believe you were there, but I remember getting Dave McWayne was there, and I remember being like really excited for them and upset that I didn't jealous, happy for them, jealous, but happy for them as well because they're good
yeah.
guys and they deserve it.
Yeah, those guys are great. And I don't even remember how that happened. We got connected through something, probably through the podcast world or like a publicist or something. Um, and I was setting up the Boston screening with Dave from Big D. Like he was going to sort of host it, I guess. And then I think the New York one was with Scott from Real Big Fish. And they just sort of said, "Hey, we can host the Q&A if you want." I was like,
That sounds
"Do
really
you
fun.
like ska music?" Yeah. Okay, great. Go for it. Because I couldn't go to all of them. We did like 90 something screenings, and I was only able to go to a dozen or so. Because you make, little insider baseball, you make about $300 to $400 doing a sold out screening like that after you pay for promo and all
Mm.
the theater rentals and things like that. So if I had flown to all of them, I would have made $0 or lost money.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
not
wasn't
gonna
able to
happen.
go to the ones that weren't on the West Coast.
Sure, of course. So what's your for like the distribution and promotion of this like with the industry? I'm not sure if you saw the news. Like literally an hour ago, they just announced Wonder Woman's coming to straight to HBO Max. Thank fucking God.
I'm stoked.
But
Yeah.
how does
Because
this
I'm not going to
change?
a theater anytime
No,
soon.
we have some drive-ins
I
around
know
here, but by
people.
that time it's gonna be too cold to even do it. But yeah, I'm not going to one. Not in
Yeah.
this country, at least. And
Yeah.
what's how does that affecting your release of this? Is it a kind of just more of a digital approach, virtual screenings?
Yeah. Yeah. We did a couple of virtual screenings and a couple of film festivals. I think we did 5 or 6 now that were switched to virtual. And it's weird because it's different. Um, it's way less fun. I loved with the ska movie going around and doing the screenings, and we would have bands play after, and we would do the Q&A, and it would be this huge party, and everybody would go out drinking afterwards, and it was this big like ska family reunion in almost
Mm.
every town.
Oh,
So you get all these people that you haven't seen in 20 years, but you remember them from the ska scene that you grew up in, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and those, like, I'm going to treasure those memories for the rest of my life. Like the one we did in Eugene, where I played in those bands, 3 of my old ska bands from the 90s and early 2000s did reunion shows, did a set after. So I played 3 sets in a row with these dudes I haven't played music with, in some cases since the 90s. And those experiences were amazing. And that's like the power of not just a movie, but like a shared cultural experience where people get together and appreciate some dumb piece of art, whether it's a documentary about ska music or a documentary about Blockbuster Video or a concert or a movie. Um, and I love the theatrical experience. I was like, I had a movie pass for the 8 months that was a viable thing. And I still have a subscription to Regal. If they're ever open, they haven't been charging me during the pandemic, but you know, because it was always worth it, even though it's $25 a month, I would go to 6 movies in a month
yeah.
and it would be a great deal. Um, so I'm a huge proponent for the in-person physical, the theatrical experience, the event, right?
Oh
With
yeah.
a Q&A or with a meet and greet or whatever the thing is. Like I had it in the back of my head. I was going to take all my pop culture movies I was making and get booths at comic book conventions and sell DVDs one at a time and posters and action figures. And that's the kind of person I want to be with movies. All of that is gone right now. There are no conventions, there are no theaters, there are no film festivals, there are no meet and greets, or there shouldn't be. So we did a few drive-ins. and that was kind of fun, but super weird because you can't hear people laugh at the jokes, and they honk their horns at the end, which like I'm a scared little person who gets scared by car horns, so that was like not fun. But I get the idea behind it. Um, so we've been very lucky. We got a distributor that we like. They're called 1091. Used to be The Orchard, and they've put out movies like Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in the Shadows. And they kind of get the quirky indie tone. And we've been working with them. We're doing this digital release on December 15th, and it's going to be like a wide digital release. It'll be on cable VODs and everywhere you can rent movies and buy movies, Amazon, iTunes, Fandango, Xbox, satellite. It's actually going to be on Dish Network to rent, even though Dish owns Blockbuster. It's like a whole full circle thing.
That's so funny.
But the distribution thing that's the coolest to me is that we were able to make DVDs and get them on the shelf at Blockbuster while there was still a Blockbuster. That was like a goal from day one. And so I don't know, maybe 30 people have rented it so far because it's a pandemic. You got to wear a mask. It's 6 feet apart and they're at reduced capacity. But even if just one person had gone in and rented it, that would have been like a really cool life achievement for me. But yeah, it's all digital. But it will be, I mean, I don't know. This is my first time with a distributor, so I don't know what to expect, but they tell us it's getting a pretty wide release and that it will be places. And I'm hoping if there is a benefit to COVID, it's that there aren't a lot of movies coming out. And so instead of being, one of 10,000 movies that hits iTunes in December, maybe we're one of 50. Yeah. And so maybe that's a benefit. I don't know, but it still sucks not doing theaters.
I know. It's COVID just sucks. There's no way around that one. We had worked with a site called See Alive where they do like interactive movie watches. We did like our birthday bash with them, but
I think the first Friday after our movie comes out, I don't know if you know Film Threat with Chris Gore.
No.
He used to be on G4 TV. He did the DVD reviews every Tuesday, DVD Tuesday. But he has a podcast. It used to be like a paper magazine back in the day about indie film that I would read called Film Threat. Now it's a podcast and a website and all these things. But he's doing like a live watch along thing. And I think it's the first Friday after it comes out. So in the middle of December, we're all going to get on Zoom and it's like a live audio commentary. So me and Sandy and the other filmmakers, and we're hoping Doug Benson, and we'll ask Kevin. We'll see if he'll do it. Probably not, but it'll be with the cast and crew and a podcast host, and we're going to do a live watch along so people can, hopefully you've already seen it. This will be the second viewing,
sure,
ideally. But that's a cool thing, and that that is something I would say the sort of live streaming Zoom. I don't know, revolution that has happened because of COVID is kind of cool because there are those things like I watched the movie reunions that Josh Gad is doing.
Yeah.
And there was one that was the cast of That Thing You Do, which is my all-time favorite movie that's not part of a trilogy.
It's probably one of Tom Hanks's best. In all honesty, yeah. I fucking love that. I watched that an obsessive amount on VH1 and being like, why is this so good?
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. And he directed it.
That's a made-for-TV movie.
Co-wrote the songs.
Yeah. That I couldn't believe. And it was made for VH1. It wasn't even made for theatrical release. I literally own it. And the only way I was ever able to buy it is from a Walmart $5 bin. And it was with like 3 other movies.
Oh, yeah. I've got it on VHS and Blu-ray and the different director's cut that has a whole like a gay couple subplot that was cut out where Tom Hanks's character is gay. It's great. So it's a whole thing, and I can't believe they cut it out. But it's things like that where they get the cast back together or the bands getting back together and doing live streams and all that. That's kind of cool. If you're going to have a pandemic, I'm sure glad that there's Zoom and video chat and technology.
Yeah, same.
20 years ago, this would have been a lot worse.
I know. I love the I like the optimism. So I hope to get to see hope to see the some fun cool promotional stuff and that yeah, I'll send you the See You Live stuff. I think you and your crew would really can benefit from it because I found
Cool.
it because I'm a huge fan of the podcast Blank Check, and Griffin, actually it was Griffin and Paul Scheer were doing a watch along of Galaxy Quest where you could watch it with them, and then you had a
Nice.
chat box, and then they had like the video of Griffin and Paul, and like, and it was so much fun. And then we did a spider for our show turned 7. We did a Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse watch party with all of our fans. They came all together, and it was the most fun I've ever had. It was
Oh,
super
nice.
fucking fun because it just, I guess it's like the old timer, like me, the old timer, like just learning Twitch for the first time. I'm like, this is what you kids been doing. This is great. Oh, excellent. Oh man, I can't thank you enough for your art and for your time, both for the round table and that wonderful poster you made for us. Which really warmed my heart, that I absolutely love, and for doing the podcast. So, like, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I have social media. My name is Taylor Morden. I am Googleable. Um, the movies, I'm at Ska Movie on all the platforms, I think. And then Last Blockbuster is at Last Blockbuster Movie on Facebook and Instagram, and Last Block Doc on Twitter. And they got .coms and stuff, but Google. You can just Google us.